Thank you. So today we are going to talk about XM Cloud. This is a new Sitecore fully cloud SaaS offering from Sitecore company, and I'm super excited with this product. And to be honest, I was initially a little bit skeptical when we just were approaching it, but as the more I start playing with it, the more I start changing my opinion. And hopefully, over this session, I will show you most of my findings about this platform, and we go through new interfaces, we go through development and deployment process with it. I will show you the basics of it, and hopefully you will end up on my side of this opinion. So let's start. So what is XM Cloud? As I said, this is new offering, and it entirely works on Sitecore side. Those of you who are familiar with managed cloud, you know that Sitecore took part of the care about your infrastructure from you as a company, from the end client. And with XM Cloud, they went even one step further ahead. So they took entire content management into cloud. Not just that, they took lots of infrastructural and CI/CD pipelines. They took lots of automations, and they cared of all of that and ended up with a solid, decent package offering, which is XM Cloud. So one of the biggest problems we had with legacy, I call it legacy because that's how Sitecore positioned it, with legacy XP and XM platforms was the platform upgrades, and that was something that was not well documented, and I don't understand pretty why, because Sitecore is ultimately flexible platform, so the clients can tune it up in different ways. So it's absolutely impossible to predict all the possible permutations of how clients will configure it. Therefore, you cannot document it all. So we had to be inventive. And over the last year, I alone released lots of blog posts about the upgrades. I even made a good presentation and give a talk at SUCON Europe. So that's really a big topic, and one of the biggest pains of working with platforms. So we don't have them any longer. So what happens is Sitecore doing the platform upgrades on your behalf in background. So that happens for you automatically. What you should do as the developer, you should actually focus on the actual website development. So you don't need to think about the platform, you don't need to think about all that infrastructure. And because we have now purely headless architecture, and XM Cloud only supports headless architecture, you cannot have MVC renderings any longer. Because of that, you can now do that. You can develop your websites as soon as your connection to Sitecore Experience Edge stays valid, your website will up and running. There was previously a hiring bottleneck, and most of us known as Sitecore developers, and this is how we position ourselves on the market. So we don't say ourselves like Microsoft developers or ASP.NET developers or anything like that. We claim being Sitecore developers with the knowledge of that niche Sacral knowledge. And that was historically a bottleneck of that skill set on the market, and companies struggle to find the right talents. And with this cloud platform, there is no longer bottleneck. You can pick up any decent front-end developer with Node.js and Next.js skill set, and they will be capable of doing the work for you in a pretty fast pace. And speaking about development itself, the way you now do organize the process, it gives you much faster pace. So basically, you only focus on your website. You can do truly parallel development between your, let's say, DevOps, who still is in care of any CM customizations and who manage the data and layout for you. And front-end developer, you as front-end developer, you just can simply do work in a parallel. You only talk between each other to determine the contract, saying that, I mean, how the data is exchanged, and that's it. You now even have a live coding mode, so that as a front-end developer, you type in the code and you immediately see the changes reflected on the website. So that's super awesome. And in addition, there's another benefit in reduction of operational costs. So with Exam Cloud, you only pay for what you use. This is subscription-based solution, and in general, the licensing and pricing policy was simplified dramatically. So there's much easier and much better world, and we do not need now to have DevOps or, for example, reliability engineers on a full-time base. Basically, we as developers can do that ourselves. So as I mentioned, CMS itself is headless, and that means you do communicate through Sitecore Experience Edge. So we do not have any longer Sitecore CD service like we in the previously we had CM and CD servers. Now we only have CM, and that CM is operating in the cloud. Instead of CD servers, you do publish your content into Sitecore Experience Edge. So for those who don't know, Sitecore Experience Edge is a kind of API endpoint, but it's a mixture of API endpoint and CDN. So it's ultra fast, and it's very reliable, and it operates with GraphQL schema. So that's how your front-end application, we call it head application. So we have now headless architecture, and head is separate from headless, which is your content, which is your front-end website. So head is taking the data out of Experience Edge. And another thing is that the default way of building your website, which is suggested by Sitecore, is using Sitecore Next.js framework. And Next.js on its own is extremely powerful tool, and it also allows you options for Go and Jamstack, where you do where you generate the pages in advance and you publish them into CDNs. So the render.html is delivered immediately to your client browsers, which is super fast. Another interesting thing is that Exam Cloud, it comes with embedded CDP and personalized tenant. So because we do not have CD server and we do not have Xconnect, XDB, and all these things we previously had in the Experience platform, there is no longer a place where we can do personalization, because personalization was applied on CD servers when the page was rendered prior to sending to a client. So Sitecore had to give a response to that, and in addition to fully empowered solutions they can sell you, they included a thin version of these products into default Exam Cloud offering. So by default, you will have both Slim CDP tenant, and you will be able to do some basic personalization. I will show you how it looks in action and what kind of rules you get out of the box. That will be a part of my demo. There are also new tools. We have sites, pages, and components. So sites is for managing multi-site deployments as well as multi-language. Pages is kind of main interface. So Sitecore has rethink the way how you as an editor would do what kind of experience you would have, because looking back, we had content editors for a decade, or if not more than that. An experience editor is probably sitting with us for 8 or 9 years. So all these interfaces they have not changed with time, but Sitecore introduced these new interfaces. And I will again show that in action. This is the authoring tool for you as a content editor to play around your content. And components is a new tool which is currently in beta, but it's extremely powerful tool, and I will emphasize on it. I will show you why it's extremely powerful and what you can do with that. And because of its cloud native nature, XM Cloud has some limitations. And one of the biggest is that we do not have headless forms currently supported with XM Cloud. And the reason is that we don't have CD server, we only have Edge. And if you have a form, where does this form submit the data to? So currently there is a gap around this functionality. So if you are thinking of moving your existing projects which have forms, you need to reconsider that to use maybe some third-party solutions, or maybe revise this functionality another way. And there is a promise from Sitecore and expectation from the community, so that they come up with the forms as a composable product that will be another composable product in Sitecore family, which will be integrated with XM Cloud, very likely through Sitecore Connect. And with that in this, you will be able to collect and gather data from your websites, as well as apply analytics and personalization and do other bits of marketing functionalities around the forms. So the second limitation is, unfortunately, media library can serve only 50 megabytes media items with Sitecore Edge. That's sad news, but the good news, we do have old good media library. It's still with us. We can still use it. We can still publish that. We can still use images, so unlikely we'll have images more than 50 megabytes. And if you are serving PDF documents from your media library, most of the documents would fall under this limitation, likely, unless you have something very huge. So that's what you need to check if you do a migration. And if you do have these bigger files, you have an option of using Sitecore DIM. So you may consider going that way, or you can just publish your large file statically. That's also an option, but that limits your editing capabilities. So another limitation is search. So previously we had Sitecore Content Search API, which was running against Solr. And Solr internally works for Sitecore XM Cloud, but XM Cloud use it for own internal purposes. So if you go to content editor, you will still be able to benefit from search. It will be still powered by Solr, but what you cannot do is you cannot create your custom indexes. And instead of doing that, you would probably consider any third-party solutions. There is a composable option of Sitecore Search, and I do have a website built as a demo that has both XM Cloud and Search integrated. I will show later. So this is on agenda. Also, you may think about Search Stack Studio, Algolia. Maybe you want to think into Caveo. So there are options. It's for you to consider. Another limitation is that XM Cloud is single region at the moment. So when you get your initial XM Cloud subscription, which is called organization, you have to specify which region you are based to. And I want to highlight that it's not your client website, it's only your CM interface. So basically that's where most of your content editors are allocated. So in case if that is United States, that's where most of your authors are sitting. You select US East or US West. But when you do your head websites, you publish them. For example, you publish them into Vercel, and Vercel is more or less geo-distributed. So the end website will be distributed. It's only the CM is not. And another thing is that if your website has a login area, membership, for example, membership section, or anything that is login fenced, where customers need to enter credentials in order to get this access. Previously, you used Sitecore security in order to set up these things, but the content now get published to Edge and treat Edge as just a flat CDN with the published data. So there's nothing about security, and basically you need to, if you want to have that, you will need to implement security at your rendering host, at your head application yourself. So that may be a difficult, it's still doable, but it's a difficult option to go. So at the basic most scenario, you probably would not want to implement the website with this functionality. One of the new tools coming with XM Cloud is Deploy App. So Deploy App is a graphical user interface for your build and deployment process. So basically you have CI/CD and it operates against all your environments. And of course it has its own limitations, but well, you at least have an alternative. And I will show you how it looks in action at the end of this session. But what you need to know as for the moment is that it only works with GitHub at the moment. They might want to add another support to another repositories like DevOps, like Bitbucket, maybe anything else like GitLab, but for the moment it's only GitHub. And this is quite impressive tool. So you see all the logs, you see everything here. And once I complete with the demo, we will create a new project and we will do new deployment. The next slide is for those of you who are more on a sales path. So what is the offering from Sitecore and the way they position it now is that default way of selling products today is XM Cloud. And only if your solution is limited in some way, for example, if you have login functionality as I described, or if you need to use forms, or for example, if you under some sort of compliance with geo-regulatory issues where you have to obey and comply with the content residency policy. In that case, you may still use XM and XP platforms. You can use managed cloud, or you can host them on your own as we did it before PaaS. So the option remains to you, but the default way will be now XM Cloud. And I think that's enough for the introduction. Let's go to the demo. Yes, that's good chance for you to show the documentation. XM Cloud has documentation for developers and for non-developers. It's all published, so please feel free to familiarize yourself with it. There's lots of interesting facts about the platform and things you need to know. So in order to get logged into your system, you need to go to that URL, portal.sitecorecloud.io. You will be asked to credentials. So there is no more such thing like identity server. It's left with the platforms. So now we have universal identity, and that is something that authorize you and authenticate you against all the composable solutions. So that's how the main screen of Portal looks like. And I currently have 4 projects. And probably before going ahead, I will tell you about the terminology. So in the world of XM Cloud, all you see, it belongs to subscription. So subscription in XM Cloud terminology is called organization. So I have organization. This is the name of my organization. That's my employer where I work in. And as a part of this organization, with this subscription, we allowed to have 2 projects. So I have 1 project and 2 projects. With each project, I can have 3 environments. And that would be 1 production environment and 2 non-production. So the assumption is that you have some lower environment where you do development. Then you have some QA environment, or maybe staging environment, or maybe pre-production environment. And then you have production environment where it all works for production purposes. And you can easily promote the code by single button. So from low environment to a high environment, just through this user interface. So let's take a look at the projects. Once again, I have 2 projects as a part of my subscription or organization. And here they are. Going into this project, I see only 1 environment. I can create other environments, and I can give it a name. I define if it's production or production. Another bit, I will show you the part of deployment. Anyway, what I want to show you here is, oh yeah, let's take a look about these guys. So these are authentication clients. So you can create tokens here for, let's say, external connections. So one of the things you use to manage your XM Cloud is your Sitecore CLI. And from version 5 of CLI, it supports XM Cloud. And under the hood, it uses some sort of management REST API, but the result is anyway the same. It manages this subscription remotely. This UI basically does the same. It still calls the same API in order to perform some actions against your projects and environments. But if you want to use other tools like PowerShell, for example, or maybe you build your own UI for managing your subscription, in that case, you need to create a token here and share it with your tool. And this is another screen for showing health status for many aspects of your XM Cloud organization. So there are built-in checks, and you can see what exactly it checks against, its status and explanation. What does it do? Right, so I also probably need to mention licensing of XM Cloud. So It's very similar to a subscription license from Sitecore platform, as I said. So the cost model is simplified. It's based on traffic and consumption. Every XM Cloud license includes a number of projects and environments, and you can use it to manage your instance. So interestingly, that if all you do here with the graphical portal, you do not need to provide the license, because being a part of organization, it already assumes you have a license. So the license is kind of built in, and for any deployment, it automatically rolls into. But you also have an option of getting XM Cloud in Sitecore containers. So you pull the image of XM Cloud, and in order to run this image locally, you will need your Sitecore license. And I've been advised that your Sitecore partner license would work with that XM Cloud. So I cannot test it myself because I'm using Sitecore MVP license, which is exclusive. So it also works. But anyway, you can try it. It's very quick exercise too. All right. So I think we are ready to go to new interfaces. And let's take a look at pages. Those of you who have played with Horizon, you will see this interface as very much familiar. So Horizon being discontinued for XP and XM platforms from version 10.2. You can still install it on 10.3, but you can install 10.2 version of Horizon. But it went into XM Cloud into more advanced way, and this is how it looks like. So what we see here is we are based on pages. There is list of sub features. We will take a look at them later. We see content tree here with the navigation and our pages. So you can click each, let's say we go to speakers and it loads. What I like here is you see different interfaces. So I have table, I have phone, I can even rotate that. So that helps you testing your responsive UI. There is another mode when you want to see your website in preview mode, like you did it previously with Experience Editor. So this shows you mostly how your visitors will see that. Take a look at this URL parameter. So Horizon equals preview. They don't even change the name, it's still Horizon. There's item ID, language, the name of the website. So all the things are familiar to you as major Sitecore developers. So it's multi-site by default, and you can switch between websites. Also, languages are here. And interestingly, right-hand side panel contains additional parameters you as developer, you are giving your editors to control. So you may expose, for example, specific styles or other parameters you want for developers to be able to do. And one of the interesting things I like about this interface, there is no save button. So everything you do, it takes changes automatically. Of course, you still need to publish. It publishes to Edge, but you don't need to save it like you did before. And that's really great. All right. So one of the things I find confusing with the naming is that Pages application, it has components I would say, components view. So you see these are components, and that's very alike to SXA as you used to work before. But we also have a components app I would like to show you in a minute. So what we see here, we see lots of components. They are grouped by these sections. And you see some of them are grayscale. These are components that coming out of the box with SXA. And yes, this is SXA. XM Cloud comes with SXA headless by default, and every XM Cloud instance has SXA headless. It controls multi-site and it gives you lots of options. So if you are thinking about if I should develop a new website with SXA or without, I think 99% the answer should be with, because it gives you lots of advantages and most of things are coming out of the box. For example, SEO things like robots and especially sitemaps, they already get sorted, while if you have to implement this manually, there will be kind of labor for you to implement that on your rendering host for your head application so that it somehow gets the data, crawls your experience edge. So it's kind of cumbersome, but with SXA, it's coming out of the box and it's very much configurable here with this version of SXA. The difference between this is those grayscale are coming out of the box and these colored, these are part of the deployed website. The one you see, this is an excellent demo website from Sitecore demo team. And that's the one we will be deploying later. And all these components are customly created. So we also have content view for those of you who are still comfortable of editing in more like content editor experience. You still see Sitecore tree here. You can navigate and do things intuitively. Now, this is interesting. This is personalized. So this is Sitecore personalized client that is coming with XM Cloud. So let's take a look at that in action. So the difference between what you did in the past and what you do with XM Cloud is that personalization in XM Cloud, it happens against the whole page. So I have this speakers page and I do have a page variant, which is default. This is something coming by default. So in order to personalize, let's create a variant. And what I want to do is I want to present a page differently for visitors from Argentina. So I give it a name. And now we will select the audience. So now, after we give it a title, we need to select the condition. A little bit similar to what we have with the old rules engine. There are 14 rules, and most of them are session-based. Some of them are still historical data powered, like this one. The visitor has visited page within the past X days, where X is between 1 and 30. So they don't let you use more historical data than a month. And in order to, if you want to do that, you need to purchase the full version of Personalize. But anyway, we will be using country, which is exactly session-based rule. So we select Argentina. The visitor is in Argentina during current visit or session. So let's add the condition and save it. reference was here. Okay, we save it. Go back to our page. So what we see now, in addition to default page variant, we now have a page that will show up to Argentina visitors. And if you take a look at these components, they show yellow, like feature speaker is not personalized. Interestingly. So let's do header banner. So let's do basic personalization. Argentina. All right. And we go to the default one. And we, for example, hide this component. Right, guys, looks like I messed something up. This is not what I wanted to show you. Let's delete it. Let's unhide it back and do it again. Next. Save, close. So now we personalize this component here. So it's personalized for this variant. And I want to remove this component for default page. That's what I want to do. So let's hide it. And here it should still stay. But for some reason it doesn't work. So as a part of our demo, I wanted to have a banner only displayed for visitors from Argentina. So it worked for me previously, but I cannot figure out what I messed up here. Sorry for that. But anyway, I can assure you this personalization works. And when you publish to Edge, it publishes each page variant individually. That's actually the reason why they personalize not the components, but the page itself, because previously the component level personalization was sorted out in the runtime on your CD server, but now there is no CD server, so you have to do you have to publish each single page there. And you also have analytics here that basically shows you lots of useful information. You get heat maps for session visits, you get number of visitors, all that sort of data you would want to see, use by countries, source of your traffic, devices, separation system, so all that things you would want to have. Right. So we saw components here, but let's go to components application in order to create such components. a little bit mess with navigation here. What I will do is I go to content editor, and this button now takes you to XM Cloud Launchpad. By the way, if I go to license details, you will see that it is XM Cloud, and you see the version, and the last build and update was done 5 days ago. So they do update it. Anyway, let's go to Launchpad. So we have pages, components, Explorer. This is another new interface. We have old good experience editor and content editor with media library. It's still with us. Workbox, recycle bin, all that with us. The good news, you have PowerShell extension, which is built into your content editor. But if you go to content editor and if you try to run PowerShell, it will not let you do that. Let me show you. So I already enabled it, but if you try to run this by default, you will need to elevate your security permission. And in order to do that, what you need to do, you need to set up environmental variable. Which you can do here. And yeah, I know what happened. I do have PowerShell, but probably it will not let me run. Yeah, it shows me script forbidden. So if you run console, it will not let you do anything because you need to elevate it. And in order to do that, you go to environmental variables and modify these to allow. That will allow. Or you can do confirm, so that it will ask you for permissions. But the catch here, that is not enough to change this variable. You also need to do redeployment, because this setting will take place only after redeployment. Anyway, let's go to components. And this tool is at its early stage. It's internal access, but the tool will be extremely powerful, and I very much recommend you to see this video by Jason Sincere. He shows up how to use components in details, how this tool works and what you can do with it. This is 7 minutes long video, but you'll get much understanding about this new tool. But anyway, as for us, what we can do here, we can create component. And the assumption is that editors would be able to create components just here in the graphical interface without any development or without any coding. And not just create something simple, but quite powerful ways. And even wire this up with external data. So for example, I want to add component into default collection. I give it up name demo. Let's add it. So we get component, editor screen. You can add different versions. And interestingly that here you can do layout, you can specify columns, positioning, vertical alignment, horizontal alignment, wrapping, all the things. And you can operate the basics in terms of UI elements, like you can create buttons, links, variables, images, whatever, like text. And let's stage it. And then you have styles tab where you can manipulate styles. But what is most impressive here is data sources section. So the assumption is that you can use external data sources to hydrate your components with data. And one component may have, let's say, title, description, image, and link, kind of promo block. And all these four fields can be powered by different external systems. So you can use other CMSs like Contentful that supply the data using REST API. You can use Content Hub 1, you can use just Content Hub, or you can use just XM Cloud itself. So lots of flexibility. You can paste JSON with your structure here to map your structure against the data if you don't have component. You can fetch from URL, for example. I do take statistics about nation population. Boom. So it shows me the data structure graphically, and here I can map it against specific fields of my components, save it, and that would magically work. And once I save it and publish, I will be able to see that in a Pages application at this section. So this is pretty much impressive. Right, so we're running out of time. Show you one more tool here, which is called Explorer. So this is another tree-based view of your data, but they, in some way, Sitecore decided to walk away from a tree-based style of presenting content structure. So instead, what they do, they use a drill-into way of navigation. And it definitely makes things clean and clear. And if you need to take a look for the entire structure of content tree, you still have old good content editor that may help you. But this interface, sorry, this interface is supposed to help you to get content editor-like experience. And design button takes you to Pages. All right, let's get back to development. So what do you do for development? What are your development options with XM Cloud? First and the most important is that you have XM Cloud containers for your local development. But unfortunately, with your local development, you will not have pages, you will not have components, you will not have Explorer. You will only have your content editor and experience editor in the old way of doing things as you had it before. You will need a license in order to run container, but once you run, it will work. So I cloned a source code of XM Cloud instance demo that features Sucon websites and MVP site, all them running together. And after, I believe, half an hour, I was able to run all these websites locally. And you have still an option of running this locally built website. So you can build website locally and have experience with pages. But in order to do that, you need to set up a reverse proxy with a local tunnel so that your local website running on your host machine will become available publicly. So it will generate URL for your website, and any global visitor will be able to reach this local website externally. And you set up this URL to site definition here in XM Cloud, and this is how it becomes visible to XM Cloud. So what would you as developer be able to do? That's a good question. So you can definitely apply config patches in a similar way how you did before. Of course, you cannot do lots of things as you did before. There is no CD instance, and you can only customize it against CM. Many pipelines do not exist there. So you, well, for example, HTTP request begin and request end is still there. So you can still customize these pipelines, but they only relate to CM instance itself because there is no CD. You do have NuGet feeds, and you do have packages in a similar way, like you referenced them previously with Visual Studio. All these XM Cloud packages have specific naming. They all start with sitecore.xmcloud.package name, with sitecore.xmcloud.platform being the main package. They use semantic version for naming, so that features version of XM Cloud, which you can see in your content editor. So this is semantic version. Right. So there is assumption that we as developers will customize XM Cloud less and less with time, with most of our customization taking place around data synchronization and similar things, rather than modifying and altering system itself. So as I said, we do have PowerShell extension, and once you get access to it, gives you direct access to database. So please be extremely cautious doing that. There is a built-in connector for Content Hub for both CMP and DAM, and it's built in with the cloud version here, and it's also is built in into XM Cloud images now. So you have it out of the box. There is unfortunate limitation of installing familiar modules, so you cannot install your modules like you did before with package installation. And you still have this interface, this familiar installation wizard, and the only reason you have it because they did not remove it. And those packages that do carry on changes into your file system, they simply will not work because this XM Cloud on production, it's running in containers. So, and containers are immutable. It's similar to why you cannot install packages on your local-based container deployment. So there are two options. No, probably there is one option. You need to unpack your package, and if you really need to use it, you need to include it into your source control. And if it's compatible with XM Cloud, for example, if it does not interfere with CD server or any XDB or XConnect power things, it may work. The code base, speaking about code base, there are different starter kits, and you may see demo coming from Sitecore demo team. I forked the one to my GitHub account, and this is a source code for both XM Cloud development and rendering host hat development. So you deploy this into XM Cloud and you deploy that to Vercel. And from XM Cloud, you can also create your Vercel integration. And Vercel is, once you do that, it's smart enough when it sees your source code, it sees which folder of your source code has Next.js inside, and it draws a small next icon left or right hand side from your icon. I think left. Right. You do have CLI for managing your XM Cloud, and all you can do from the interface here in deploy app, you can do with your CLI. If you want to have very much custom deployment of your CI/CD pipeline, it's also possible. Or if you want to do that not from GitHub, but from any other provider, you can do that with PowerShell. So let's take a demo of the deploy app. So I have this repository and we'll play with it. So what I'll do is I will delete my environment, and I will also delete my project and start from scratch. So I deleted environment. Now I can delete project. You cannot delete project without, you cannot delete project which has any active environment. Boom. So now I have only one project. And now I want to create a new project. So the options are if I want to use starter kit template, and Sitecore nicely provide us with skate park template. Option 2 is if you want to wire up your GitHub account and build XM Cloud environment from a source code. That's what I want to do. So GitHub is the only option here. I select it. So I already wired up my GitHub account to this XM Cloud organization. So that's why I have it here. Otherwise, you can go through create new GitHub connection. So now I give the project a name, a summit. Account is there, and I need to select the repository, which is this one. So repository relates to your project, and when we set up environment, it will relate to a specific branch. So you may have main branch deploying to your production environment, develop branch developing into your develop non-production environment, and maybe another branch deploying to another environment. And say an environment in XM Cloud terminology, I mean exactly that what environment was in XP and XM platform world. This is something that operates against a single license, and you may have as many websites per environment as you want. So each of these environments may have multiple websites. But anyway, this is project. I give it name. I give it repository. Go next. Now I need to do environment. I call it prod because it will be production environment. And now I link the branch from this repository, which is main. And I also can select an option that every time someone commits or pull requests into that particular branch, it will redo automatically and redeploy into my XM Cloud environment. And I select yes. And that's it. It all starts. Will take around 15 to 20 minutes to end up with the whole process. There are 4 major stages here. First is provisioning, where it provisions environment from a container image. Once done, it will build your solution, and having artifacts, it will deploy against your environment. And you can also specify post actions which you want to do upon your build completion. For example, you may want to rebuild indexes, those internal indexes like master index you have or core index with your XM Cloud environment. You may want to pull the URL so that it so it prevents you from cold start, so that your environment becomes hot already. Maybe something else. Coming back to source code, I want to show you a few new files. So one of the most important files is XM Cloud build JSON. And this file configures build targets, editing hosts. You can also specify XDT transforms as a part of this file. You may show which kind of serialization you want. For example, you only want to serialize project files, not touching your feature, for example, and foundation in Helix structure. This is JSON file. This is how it looks like. Post actions. And these are post actions I just was talking about. So we have warm up CM, exactly what I was mentioning, populate schema, reindex these 3 indexes. Pay attention that we don't have web index any longer because we don't have web database, we don't have CD. And we do publish. Another important file you may see here is this one, new Edge token PowerShell script. Many of the starter kits and repositories will have it, and this is to create a token to operate against your XM Cloud Edge. I would recommend you to take a look at my blog post. I will share at the end of the session, I do more description about this file and why do you need to use it. So it's just a PowerShell script. Let's go back to our deployment. So provisioning, connection, environment created successfully. I think it's done. Yes, it's done. And now it does build. So provisioning took only 3 minutes. And for those of you who have played with containers, you will get this output. It may look familiar to you in many aspects. Right. Okay, my blog is blog.martinmiles.net, and I published a big guide here. Actually, it's called The Ultimate Guide to Sitecore XM Cloud. Opening it, you will see many of the things we spoke about today, and I have nice indexer to that. Yeah, this is something I overlooked over today discussion. So with Next.js, you have Sitecore Next.js SDK, and this is a toolkit for building your Node application with Next.js. And lots of the things are coming out of the box, like routing, like fetching layout service and mapping your components, resolver for placeholders, support for multi-language fields, components factory, support for experience editor for analytics. So all that is coming out of the box with this SDK. You don't need to build it by yourself. Another thing that I want to mention as a part of development is that without having CD server, you now need to move all the logic previously done on your CD server to your head application on the rendering host. So all these custom pipelines running on CD boxes, they now have to move here. And the good news about running Next.js is, for example, if you run it on Vercel, and Vercel is the organization that created Next.js, with the recent version of it, you have something called edge function of Next.js middleware, and you can apply some intermediate logic per your request. So basically how you manipulate requests on CD boxes, you will do the same, but on your head application with Vercel. So lots of interesting things I am sharing with this blog post. Lots about GraphQL and Edge. We do have headless SXA, as I mentioned. There is a starter kit with SXA that works with Next.js. So SXA now is fully headless, which means it operates with React and Next.js. We do have rendered variants as we had it before, but previously we had it as Scriben templates, but now we have them purely as Next.js. So for example, you can open this Chroma component, and this is how render invariant looks like. This is default one, and you can create another render invariant. Here they call it with text, and this is Next.js code. So either of them will take play if you choose it. Multi-site implementations are coming out of the box. You do have page, you do have all existing abstractions like page design partial designs, but you also can have size. You can also have page branches now, and there will be something called site-specific. Oh no, I think that's already in place. Site-specific standard values. And site templates is something that likely to happen with the future releases. I mentioned that search is no longer an option for us. And this is an app. Someone built an app with the XM Cloud and deployed it to Vercel. So this is a head application which has Sitecore search integrated. And you may see it's a medical application with lots of things, but look how they nicely implemented faceting. So all that is possible with Sitecore search, and it applies changes immediately because that's headless application. You may actually play around it. It's called get apps Vercel. Sorry, gapps.vercel.app. If you open it up and play around it, you will see it in action. So I think I covered most of it. Again, to sum up, you don't have CD server any longer, and that's why you don't have your familiar tools like XDB. The whole XDB is not longer with us, including all the tools. You don't have experience EXM. You don't have identity server. You don't have FXM. You don't have path analyzer. You do not have MVC renderings. That's why there is no MVC option for 6A, only headless. You don't have publishing service. You do not have Sitecore forms, unfortunately, but that's only for now. Sooner we'll get some solution for that. You cannot do Sitecore search indexes customly like you did it before. There is no universal tracker. But there are some features that still remain with us. So you still have media library, you still have workbox with workflows, content editor and experience editor. They all remain untouched. You get, as I say, headless, you get PowerShell, and lots of other less important features. They also stay. Right, so while this is in the build and deployment stage, actual deployment, I think I've done with my demo, and we can go to question and answers if you have some.
Okay, thank you, Martin. It's really great session. So please, mention any question if you have on the chat window, so we can go through that.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, mention what?
I just asked the people to mention the question if they have any on the chat window.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
yeah, sure.
So meanwhile, if we get any questions, maybe like we can start with some question. So like one question, Martin, like you have shown horizontal master index, right? And we already have Sitecore master index. So like what is the purpose of this horizontal master index?
Horizon Master Index. So coming back to pages. Do I have it open somewhere? Yeah. So pages is something that we previously had as Horizon. And they do have index for it specifically. So everything pages rely on, they keep in this index. But for us as users or developers, that should not bother because it's used for internal purpose only.
Okay. Okay, got it. We have one more question, and asking that what kind of customization are allowed in XM Cloud?
Yeah, I think I covered that already. You can apply config patches so basically remember how you did it in the old good XP world. You do it in a very similar manner. So let me show you something. We still do have Sitecore folder, we still do have admin, and we still do have show config. And for some reason, it's not there. Yeah, I think it's not allowed to see in this portal-based version, but you definitely can see show config in your local container of XM Cloud running. So once you do show config there, you will see all the pipelines that are still here with XM Cloud. I want to tell you in advance that this is under big housekeeping at the moment, so they are removing irrelevant pipelines that are no longer in action. So you may still see some redundant pipelines, and same is true for the user interface. So let's take a look at, do they have web database, by the way? Because we should not have it. Let's go content editor. Here. So what do I have? Sorry, guys. The reason I don't see it because I deleted this environment. Remember, I deleted this environment and now I am redeploying it. So that's why I don't see show config. Okay, but I have another one. Let's play against another project here. So maybe it will show me config. And looks it does. Yeah, it's still possible to see config on your portal. So this is config of XM Cloud. And there are several interesting findings. Actually, thanks for asking this question because I missed something. So outside of this config, you typically have web config, just a web config of your instance outside of Sitecore config, where you specify the role for your instance. So we had something like standalone, content management, content delivery, indexing, a couple of XDB related roles. So none of that is here any longer. And if you get into your local running container and see what your web config shows, you will see the role is now named XM Cloud. So like that. And if you type XM Cloud and go here, this will show you lots of interesting findings. So that's alone is a very good exercise. It comes for all. Cannot find it here, but I do remember a couple interesting places I spotted out with this configuration about XM Cloud role. But anyway, you got the idea. So once you have this show config and you want to customize any of these things, you can still create the patch file and you can apply it with your customizations. You can change different things with build configuration of xmcloud.build.json file, including serialization. And serialization works perfectly well here. You can sync the serialized items between your local and between your cloud instances. You can basically, another good exercise would be once you get PowerShell up and running, you do have access to your database and you do have access to your file system. And especially interesting would be examining file system on your cloud portal environments to see what they have. So you may also have different findings there. The next question I see, embedded CDP is part of XM Cloud with the same license. No, the answer is no. This is very slim version of CDP that only allows you to do that basic rules. So it still tracks some data for analytics, and you see the rule about X number of days, not more than 30, that actually takes the data from embedded CDP.
Okay, got it. Okay, so I guess with this we are done with questions. And if anybody has any questions, so they can reach out to us or Martin, and they will answer that question too.